year two with us and on offense, and a lot of great challenges ahead, and a lot of exciting time on the eve of spring football. So we'll just open up that you guys shoot some questions at me.
You've been able to see a little bit of Luke and John. What have your early impressions of those two been?
Yeah, limited, very limited on what I've been able to see. You know, there's some regulations there, you know, that's kept us from, you know, being all in with them, but just being around them, personality, and seeing them work in the off season with Tank. And yeah, I see two guys that like to compete, and you know, I think are excited about the opportunity that's before them. We're excited to let them show us what they've got.
Having that year last year with Tommy as a quarterback in this kind of offense, how did that maybe inform how you'll kind of work this process with Luke and John this year?
About yeah, sure. We were a little bit different. I think one of the things that these guys have an advantage of that Tommy didn't is that, you know, last year we were all new. You know, I was new, Tommy was new, Isaiah Williams was new, you know, Julian Pearl, we're all new in the offense. And now these guys that are coming in particular with John and with Luke, you know, one of the things that they have an advantage of is the people that we've got returning around them in the program, myself included, as their coach, and the other players around them that are in year two of the system should help elevate any position that is going to be plugged in that would be a new face in our unit. It should help because of the baseline familiarity of what we're doing.
Along those lines, how much ahead of the curve are you this year opposed to last year when you're installing an entirely new system?
Yeah, I think, you know, I think the way I look at it is like, you know, our goal is that whatever our ceiling was last year, you know, whatever that looked like will be the floor for this year as we move forward for, you know, 23. And I don't mean that from necessarily a black and white production standpoint, numbers. I'm talking about just our familiarity, understanding of the scheme, like whatever complexities that we were able to put in and push through and install and use during games, like whatever that ceiling was for us last year, that threshold, that needs to be the floor for where as we begin this season. And I think we're off to a good start with that, with just what I've seen from our guys early on about their recall. And so hopefully we can be more advanced from day one as we start tomorrow.
I assume it would be hard for somebody to mirror Tommy's personality and persona. Clearly Luke is not that kind of a guy, but when you go in the portal and you and your staff, do you evaluate, hey, how does this guy fit in our locker room? How does this guy fit in our team chemistry and our team dynamic?
I think you have to. I think you get yourself in trouble if you just blindly taking guys based on film or recommendations. So that was part of the process with Luke in particular when we brought him on that official visit, even though it was an abbreviated version of an official visit because of the timelines that we were facing. We were able to spend some quality time with him and his mother that accompanied him on the visit, and his brother. We were able to get, you know, to a better feel for who he is and what he was, more so than talking on the phone. So yeah, we dug deep into that and did a lot of research on what type of leader he is. He's different. He's a different type of leader than Tommy, but I think there's some similarities there as well. And I'm anxious to see all this come to life, you know, on the field starting tomorrow.
What kind of benchmarks or goals do you set for the spring, and how might you know if you've achieved them?
Yeah, we try to, you know, we try to goal and like our players all have goals that they're trying to improve upon that are tangible from an offensive standpoint. You know, it's kind of more big picture type things. I mean, obviously one of the first things that we're going to emphasize in the way we practice is we'll start in the red zone. And so we're really embracing that part of the way we're starting our spring to be inside the 25-yard line from the get-go. We've got to get better there, and there's no way to get better at it other than practicing and doing it and rolling your sleeves up and going to work, and that's where we're going to start. So that's one of the things. You know, we got to learn how to play faster. We got to execute our offense better. So there's a litany of things that we need to do that they're going to be objectives for us this spring. But from a big picture thing, big picture items, you know, there's just going to be a handful of those. And but the bottom line, the resounding theme is we just got to get better at what we're doing in year two. We got to get better at the details from a coaching standpoint and a playing standpoint. We got to get better at the details because really good offenses are a result of good execution with good players doing them and coaches putting them in position. So we just got to all get better.
Coach, you had Chase Brown, who was so effective last year. Do you anticipate having a guy like that, a one guy, one back type thing, who could see using multiple guys? What's your ideal in that situation?
Yeah, I don't think I don't know if necessarily last year was an ideal situation. I think that was unique, in Coach Bielema's track record, that, we relied on one guy so heavily, in particular in the backfield, and part of that was due to we weren't as healthy behind him, throughout the course of the season as we would like to have been. And there was games where we were more healthy than others. And then obviously, it kind of got to the point where we were riding a hot hand, of what his production was. But I don't see anything like that going forward, and not because we don't have that type of caliber of player that we think that can't go out and produce that type of yardage. We just think for the integrity of our offense and the balance that we need, more guys pulling that rope and sharing that load this year.
Along those lines, what's your running back room told you about what they can be? Obviously, there's 2 redshirt freshmen, and you had Caden. What have you kind of learned early on about that?
I think one, for me, and since I've been here, one thing that has stuck out to me about Reggie is how consistent he's been, and how he has consistently taken advantage of his opportunities. A number of big plays last year created when he had an opportunity to play. Very trustworthy. I have not seen Josh McCray healthy, to be honest with you. Now, 2 years ago, I saw it on film and knew that he produced as a true freshman. I have not seen that. So beyond Reggie's consistency, I'm really anxious to watch these guys. Some of them with a return year under their belt, Aiden Loffrey, who was banged up last year a lot, but he's been here for a year now. So I'm anxious to see Caden Fake, and I hate to start naming names, but I'm anxious to see all those guys show us what they're capable of doing on a consistent basis.
What kind of advantage do you think it's going to be this spring to be able to bounce from last season to bowl prep to your 8 weeks of winter workouts and maybe right into spring?
Yeah, it's a continuous deal. Football is a year-round process anymore. It's changed over the years, and it's helped. They got rid of two-a-days, right? A few years ago they got rid of two-a-days, which back when I played and when a lot of us coaches played, you needed two-a-days because you weren't around your coaches. You weren't around them in the summer, and you weren't with them that much for the spring practice. It's just different. You don't get the time to work with them in the off season. And now the way that's set up, obviously they've taken away the ability to go twice in a day during fall camp, but there's a reason for that, because you get the time that you get with them in the spring, the football time that's now allowed through NCAA that you get with them around tanks workouts, it allows for that process, to your point, to be a learning continuum. It's not as choppy as it used to be. It's kind of a process that leads up to fall season. I think it's a positive thing for learning and recall, and for being able to take, to our point about taking what was our ceiling last year and using that as our floor and our springboard moving forward. It allows you to do that because of the continuity of the time that you get to spend with them.
Coach, how you
Did
feel?
that answer your question well enough?
Yeah, well, I guess have you seen any benefits of that already? Just maybe.
I think that'll show up tomorrow. I think I'll be pleased with some of the early football stuff that we've done. I've been very pleased with recognizing that okay, yeah, we're in year 2 of this thing now, and our guys know the basics. They know the signals. They know the expectation. So now we can dig deeper into the details and get better at the system.
Coach, how you feeling about the depth in the wide receiver rooms? You bring some guys back and you add some pieces to that group.
Yeah, I'm feeling good about it. I think we continue to build upon the depth and the quality of guys that we're bringing in there, and I'm excited to watch our group. I keep saying that, but that's really the truth of as any coach would be, I'm excited to watch our quarterbacks play and learn how to play in our system and show us what they got. I'm excited to see the new faces on the line and our tight ends, and we've got a nice blend of guys that have got experience and that have proven they can play winning football, and we have a blend of guys that have talent and promise and expectations, and I'm looking forward to seeing those come together and turning us into an offensive unit.
What's kind of the next step for those wide receivers after the improvement last season?
Well, I think it's just to take that next step. Again, I hate to beat a dead horse a little bit, but to say, okay, whatever my best performance and the best moments that I had last year, let's let that be the new floor, the new standard for taking that and moving forward, and not regressing and taking 2 weeks to regress. Let's pick up where we left off and use the positives and the playmaking, the confidence that I think that we gained to make some plays that all those guys are returning had made, and use that to take the field here. And for the new picture of 23, I think it's just moving forward, and using that success last year that all those guys that are returning had at moments as a springboard forward.
Coach,
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Apologize for asking the office space question, but, I mean, in terms of art, what is it you say he would do here?
Yeah, well, he does, I think he's kind of assuming, you know, kind of a standard, like a graduate assistant type role, even though he's going through like his medical hardship, you know. And so, really, you know, he's just, he's gonna be a special coach, I really believe that. And you guys know how he's made up and what his DNA is and who he is, and so I'm glad that he's working side by side with me and helping us on the offensive side of the ball. And he does a little bit of everything, just kind of like all of our support staff does. We got a fantastic support staff in our building on offense, defense, and special teams. Coaches done a tremendous job, I think, of hiring young coaches that, you know, that just got it. You
Is
know?
there anything specific you think, I know it's early in his development, but that you could lean on him for?
Well, yeah, I
starting
mean,
this
I think the
spring?
obvious thing is like, okay, my communication with the quarterbacks, like, and he said just last year, like when I taught these things, like, sometimes guys won't say, Coach, that didn't make a lot of sense, or like, oh, Coach, that was really good. You know, they're just taking notes and gathering information. But I've used him as a sounding board for a lot of that already. So he's given me some really insightful information into, you know, kind of the way the offense is structured. If there's a thing we can tweak here, or Coach, like, this is really good, like, let's keep doing this. Like, he's very convicted about a lot of things. And so he's been a great, and I think he will continue to be, just having the pulse of what a learner wants to hear from his coach, like, you know, what they want to feel on the field. I think he's got some great insight into those types of things.
Could you, a couple guys on the offensive line who could have gone pro chose to stay. Tell me, when you heard the news that they were coming back, Joy and those guys, what would that mean to you?
Well, it was a great victory for us, you know, as our team, to get those guys back. And I think it was the right decisions for those guys. I know it was. And you know, because they certainly did some good things and some really good things, but I think they feel very strongly that they can improve their game, address some areas that need to be addressed, and really help themselves long-term by coming back for this past year or this coming year, all the while making us a better offense. You know, the game starts up front. We know that. Doesn't matter what kind of system you want to run, and in particular what we try to do here in the offensive belief system, you know, it's like you got to run to win, you know. You got to run the ball to win. Now you got to throw the ball and supplement that with a really effective passing game. And that's an area that we've got to get better at, to supplement the running mentality that we have. And we made some strides last year, but we got to make some more strides this year. But to have those guys coming back as the epicenter and the focal point and the core of our line, it was huge for us. And now we just need them to go and enhance their game and bring and elevate the guys around them.
Barry says the obvious. What's it mean to have a guy that can be here multiple years like in Luke, as opposed to a 1 year guy that's in and out?
Yeah, I mean, that wasn't necessarily strategic, you know, for us to go out. We wanted to go out and try to get our hands on what we perceived as the best available quarterback or quarterbacks that could come help us win games, you know. It just so happened that the one that we targeted did have multiple years left, and I don't think that's a bad thing, to your point, you know. And to be able to take somebody, if Luke were to win the job and be the guy, to be able to have a guy that's going to have multiple years left, I think that would be a really positive thing for next year. But our focal point is for this year. You know, that would be icing on the cake. And so, it's like I said, to your point, it wasn't strategic to say, hey, let's get away from the 1 year transfer, or let's go get this guy. Like it was really like, let's go get the best available. I think it was a really nice bonus that we were able to go sign somebody that did have multiple years left, though.
With the offensive line, you return a lot, but I mean, how do you guys go about finding the best spot for all those guys? Seems like there's a lot of versatility and a
is.
couple of gaps to fill. Like, how important is that this spring?
Yeah, that's what the blessing of having 15 practices, then having another fall camp, summertime, to kind of get to where, as long as we get that locked and loaded, you know, I think the sooner we get it and get that identified where guys are going to piece, the more chemistry you can create. You know, that's one of the things that we were fortunate last year. Really, other than the Indiana game, which got disrupted in a kind of a strange way, you know, the flow of the O-line was pretty consistent. And I think that allowed them to continue to get better and better and more comfortable playing with each other. So it'll be important for us to identify that early, but we do have some flexibility up front. And we've got some guys that are going to be fighting, scratching, and clawing for a job that have flexibility as well. So I'll be anxious to watch that come to life I think it'll probably become pretty clear for us, probably through the first, 4 to 5 practices about kind of how that's going to shake out. But a little bit of that is TBD.
But you have some new position coaches. How's it going getting those guys in the flow there?
Yeah, well, those guys have been, Thad and Robbie have been great, and really excited to see them put their personal spin and touch on coaching their positions. And I think they both have got a tremendous track record of being coaches and developers, and they've been great assets to our room. Good people, good coaches. I'm looking forward to working with them on a daily basis as we get going here in the spring ball.
We got time for one more here.
I guess after just being here a full calendar year, what are the biggest things you learned in your first year coordinating at the Power 5 ball? How do you kind of take that in the next year or two?
Yeah, we could make that last question a long answer, but to keep as brief as I possibly can, I think when you go back and dig back and do the self-scout like we did, like you do any other year, you look back and see, where you came up short and where you excelled. And I think the first thing is, I think Lou Holtz gets credited for saying that things are never as good as they seem, and they're never as bad as they seem. Somewhere in the middle is the reality or the truth. And I think usually after reflecting the first year, going back through that, we did some really good things, but there was times where Chase made us right. We did some really good things where we executed great. We did some bad things where you're like, man, what were we doing? And sometimes it was, a call. Man, I wish I'd have did a different call. Other times it's like, man, if we could have just executed just a little bit better. So the moral of the story is that there's a razor thin line on both sides of being really successful or coming up short, especially in a competitive league that we play in. And so what's the pathway to that success? We got to get more consistent. I got to get more consistent position I put my guys in. We got to get more consistent execution of the offense, because there's a fine line between winning and losing, and we got to be more on the other side of that line than we are on this side at times, if that makes sense.